Good afternoon. My name is Chris McNamara. I am a litigation partner in the Manhattan office of Foley and Lardner. I am also the co-chair, along with Catherine Van Kampen, of the New York State Bar Association's Committee on Leadership Development. Our committee is charged with, among other things, identifying, encouraging, and mentoring prospective leaders of the association. In doing so, we endeavor to provide information and resources to those future leaders, including by fostering the participation of current and former officers and other leaders in association activities. One of our new programs this year is our Leadership Academy. The purpose of the program is to strengthen the association's leadership pool by providing leadership training to promising members at all levels who are interested in leadership positions within the association and the legal profession. Today is our very first program, and it's devoted to leadership identity. We cannot be more excited to welcome our distinguished panel, all of whom know a thing or two about leadership, particularly within the association. More specifically, we have with us today the current NYSBA president, Richard Lewis, and the immediate past presidents, Sherry Levin Wallach and Andrew Brown. Thanks so much to you all for being here, and for my co-chair, Catherine, and for our inimitable staff liaison, Kim McCarr. If you would please each just briefly introduce yourselves and briefly describe your professional experience, that would be terrific. Let's start with you, Dick.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks for putting on this program. I think your committee is stellar, and I think what you're trying to do is going to be very successful and a big deal for our association. So I've been practicing law for longer than I even want to admit to. I practice in Binghamton, New York. I primarily do litigation and business litigation. I'm with the firm of Hinman, Howard and Cattell. And I've been active with the Bar Association since I passed the bar. It used to be that people automatically joined the New York State Bar Association if they were practicing in New York. It was a given that you were going to be a member. That may not be the case anymore, but we'd like to return to that model. And I've been very active in a lot of community organizations as well.
Thanks so much, Sherry.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of Westchester County. I focus my practice in criminal defense. We also handle family court and immigration for our clients. Before that, I was in practice for myself with a partner for about 14 years. Wallach and Rendo was the name of my firm. We did civil litigation and criminal defense. I spent some time in a mid-sized firm, Macklin Friedman, doing med mal. And I began my career at the Bronx DA's office as an assistant district attorney. Of note, between closing my practice and joining the Legal Aid Society, I was of counsel to two firms, one of which was Andrew Brown's firm. So we got to work together in addition to being leaders together of the Bar Association. And I think what's really interesting for this group about that and why I bring it up is because it shows how Bar Association leadership and relationships also leads to great opportunities in practice.
That's terrific. Thanks so much, Sherry. Andrew?
Thanks, Chris. First, let me say, Chris and Catherine, we appreciate all the good work that you and your committee has done. We applaud the ongoing work and look forward to working with you more as we go ahead. I'm the managing partner of Brown Hutchinson. We are based in Rochester. We have offices throughout New York. We practice throughout the state of New York. I'm a civil trial attorney. Prior to that, if I go back to law school, graduated from law school, University of Michigan, 1984. Practiced in New York City with a firm of Nixon Peabody, which was then Nixon Hargrave. Then I had the opportunity to come to Rochester with the firm. Started my firm now some 29 years ago. In the interim, I've also been corporation counsel for the city of Rochester. I've also stepped out of the traditional conventional practice of law and was president of a cannabis company, multi-state cannabis company. I've also had the opportunity to serve as vice chancellor and acting chancellor for the New York State Board of Regents. which added nicely to round out my background of experiences. I'm also an arbitrator and a mediator and have been since 1996. And my bar association activities have been fairly vast. I've been active at the local, state, and national levels, and we'll perhaps have more opportunity to talk about that as we go forward.
Terrific. Thanks so much. I mean, you all have different experiences, but one of the commonalities I'm hearing is, leadership involvement, both within, the profession, within different firms, and also within the community. So that's something we'll be exploring a little bit more as well. One question I have is, the three of you have reached obviously the highest levels of the association. When did you decide you wanted to be a leader within NYSBA? And how did you go about sort of making that happen? I'll start, with you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's a good question. I, quite frankly, didn't start out looking to be a leader of NYSBA. I was much more active at the local level. I was president of the Monroe County Bar Association. I was president of the Rochester Black Bar Association. At the national level, I was general counsel for the National Bar Association. Through those opportunities, I learned the value of being involved with bar associations. And during my time as president of the Monroe County Bar Association, it gave me a seat in the House of Representatives, House of Delegates of the New York State Bar Association. And from there, I began to get more active in the committees and sections, and I was the chair of the New York State, of the trial lawyer section of the New York State Bar Association, and also chair of a number of task forces, and got active in committees, and eventually was the finance chair of the finance committee, chair of the finance committee, and also involved in various other ways. And that just was almost a natural progression towards the presidency. And once I became president, it was a fairly long journey, but it was not one that I was looking to end up at. That is the presidency. It just was more of an evolution and a progression of other things that I was doing.
Sherry?
Yeah, sure. So, it's really nice to have our different experiences. And for all of you listening, I think it's great to hear the juxtaposition of the different paths to leadership. So my path started actually, similar to Dick, I've been a member of the New York State Bar Association since I left law school. And I went into the Bronx DA's office, as I mentioned. And when I was there, became more active in the Young Lawyers section of the New York State Bar Association. Along with that, I would say I've always been members of other associations, my local bar associations, which I'll get into in a moment. But as getting involved with the Young Lawyers section, I began to take on some leadership roles within that section as I could manage. And I think this is an important point to add for all of you. And it's something I've done to mentored many people through, which is you can stay active in a bar association your entire career. And you can, ebb and flow with how much time you can commit to it, depending on where you are in your life. So when I was younger, I was a district rep for the Young Lawyers section for two districts. One was the first, which is New York City, where I was living at the time. The other was the 13th, which was Bronx, where I was working at the time. And then went on to take on the leadership roles, if you will, within that section. So all the different officer positions, and ended up chairing that section. While I was doing that, one of our past presidents and another individual came to me and said, "Oh, would you be interested in joining the membership committee of the association?" And I said, "Sure." So I joined the membership committee and began as a member of the membership committee. When I was, I guess, immediate past chair of the Young Lawyers section, had the opportunity to create the Trial Academy that I think it's its 15th year this year, just about to start in a week and a half from now up in Albany, which was we can talk more about that later. And I began more active in the membership committee and then liaised to the criminal justice section, which is my main area of practice and has been my whole career. So as I remained with the membership committee, I was asked to co-chair the membership committee. Eventually, I chaired the membership committee and co-chaired with another past president, Glenn Lau Key. And at the same time was active in the criminal justice section, joined their executive committee and went up the role of the positions of officers in the criminal justice section, chaired the criminal justice section, which is a 2-year commitment. And sometime around when I was involved in the leadership of the criminal justice section, I also applied for is the correct position at that point for member at large of the executive committee. And I ran for that position where I had to present before the nominating committee. I got that position and spent 4 years as a member at large while I was at the same time in my leadership roles, both with the membership committee and then the criminal justice section. After that, I was asked to be the vice president from my 9th Judicial District, Westchester, where I now live and had moved at that time, and served 2 years as vice president, then finished my term out as criminal justice section chair, and then ran for secretary of the association. I was secretary of the association for 4 years, and it was at the close of running for secretary, or sorry, my term as secretary, because you have a 4-year cap, that I then began to run for president. But I will say this to answer, go back to Chris's question, which I think is a really important one. Also for me, I did not start out thinking it was possible for me to be president of this great association. I remember looking up to the presidents as if they were heroes and people that I aspired to meet. And in fact, I have a story that's been written somewhere about running into Ken Standard on the escalator in the Marriott Marquis, which is where our annual meeting used to be, and kind of running up the stairs to introduce myself to him, because to me, he was this big figure. And of course, as I progressed, I realized that with all the experience I had, when I was approached to think about becoming president, I thought it was the right path to take. So it really was, a progression. And while I was involved with the association, of course, I was on the board of my local bar association, the Westchester County Bar Association. I left that board when I became president-elect of our association. And I was been active in the New York State Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I've been active in the New York State Defenders Association, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and various committees. I've also co-chaired task force for the New York State Bar Association. And the great thing, and I want to end with this, is as you run through these paths of leadership, you have opportunities that exist in other associations. And sometimes you have to balance them. Doesn't mean you have to leave in another association. So for example, all of us are or have been delegates to the American Bar Association's House of Delegates, which is part of the role you take when you take on leadership of our association, get active in the American Bar Association. And then, of course, as you leave leadership, other opportunities rise. So while I was in the leadership position of our association, I was asked to consider joining other boards. So now I am on the board of the New York State Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and their legislative committee and so forth, while I continue to be active in the New York State Bar Association. So I think it's a really interesting to think about the different paths and opportunities you have and make them work with your career, but never give up and never leave, because bar association work is the most rewarding work, some of the most rewarding work, I should say, that I've done in my career. The other, of course, being my day job or my real job as criminal defense work.
I see we have a question that I'm going to get to after Dick responds, but I want to talk about, NYSBA leadership and also, balancing that with the day job. But Dick.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try and be a little brief. I had a path that was somewhat similar to Andrew's. I was very involved with my local county bar and was president of that bar. While I was a member of the New York State Bar Association, I was not at first terribly active, other than to just sort of pay attention to what was going on. I had an opportunity to attend a leadership conference because of my presidency with the Broome County Bar, and to speak because we had because our bar association, our local bar association, had done some amazing things, none of which I can really take credit for. And while I was up there, I had the opportunity to see some of the programs that were being put on. Just walking into rooms and sort of observing. And when I left that meeting, I said, you know, this is an organization that would be very worthwhile to be involved with. And it was soon after that I became a delegate to the House of Delegates. I really didn't have any aspiration for leadership. I had two kids who were both extremely active in sports and school and music and so forth. And I really was not interested in missing any of their activities. So it was not something that I wanted to put all the time into, but ultimately I got involved in a number of different committees and so forth. And I guess what happened really is that I didn't keep my mouth shut. And as a result, a number of people asked if I would be interested in running. Initially, I was not, but I ultimately decided to run, and it was it's been a great experience. And the thing that I'll say that Sherry sort of mentioned is the people that you meet, the people that become good friends, you become good friends with, the people that you learn from, become lifelong friends, and the networking opportunities in this bar association are amazing. There's a lot of smart people in this bar association, and there's a lot of very interesting people, and I feel very fortunate to have been exposed to those people.
Thanks so much. So as I had mentioned, we have a Q&A option here, and I think you just either put it in the chat or Q&A. I don't know if everybody's screen is the same as mine, but please do feel free to submit your questions there, and we'll do our best to address all of them, time permitting. But what I'm hearing from all three of you, no surprise, you didn't just become president overnight. This was a long time coming. You drew on a lot of different experiences while balancing, family life and other professional responsibilities. And one of the questions we have here is being president of NYSBA a full-time job? Or were everybody's laughing because or were any of you still practicing while in the role? And I'll editorialize that a little bit because, and maybe you can all speak to this to some degree, but it's not just a one-year commitment, of course, right? You'll become president-elect, and it's more of a process. So I'll put that out there to our current president, Mr. Lewis. Is it a full-time job?
It is. If you're going to do it right, it is definitely a full-time job. I mean, as you're president-elect, or even prior to that, you become more and more immersed in section work, committee work, standing up for the interests of lawyers and the association. But while I anticipated that as president, I would be spending more than half of my time with the Bar Association, I would suggest that I probably spend 95% of my time with on Bar Association matters. And I think probably Andrew and Sherry would say the same thing. You definitely want to get around and meet members. You want to talk to people who are in the urban areas, people who are in the rural areas. You certainly want to enhance the Bar Association's relationship, not only with the Assembly and the Senate, but also obviously with the OCA and with judges in general, and the County Bar Association. So all of us have done a significant amount of traveling, driving throughout the state and elsewhere. So it becomes definitely a full-time job. And then on top of that, you're trying to stay current with litigation. You're trying to stay current with decisions that are of interest to the membership, the affirmative action decision, the abortion decision, and so on. So those are all the things that take your time, not to mention the number of phone calls you get. Now, all of that having been said, and I don't want to take too much time, as busy as we are, we could not get anything done or as much done if we didn't have people like Ernesto and Kim and Pam and the people in the office. Our staff is incredible. And we are so lucky to have them. We would be blowing in the wind if it wasn't for them. So I think that my friends would say probably the same thing.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for the props of the staff. They're certainly wonderful, and couldn't do this program or many other things with our committee without them. You touched upon, you know, the different stakeholders and coordinating with the legislature, and, you know, real-time events happen, you know, externalities that could impact, you know, certainly the association and the lawyers, you know, within it. So I'm curious, I mean, what sort of skills did each of you draw upon when navigating or responding to, you know, external events? And maybe you could speak a little bit to, you know, at least one example of an external event during your presidency that you encountered, and how you worked through that. We'll start with Sherry.
Yeah, sure. Before I start, I want to just quickly add my perspective on maintaining your practice. So I think it depends on you know, what type of practice you have and the understanding of your partners, board, you know, others in your office, for example. So I agree with Dick. I mean, it is a lot of time, and I think it's all about how much time you have and you dedicate. So I'm a mom of 3 kids. My kids are grown, or relatively grown. I mean, my daughter is just finishing high school. So, you know, I did have kids in college and high school at the time, but I also had my support of my organization. And because a lot of the work, and I'm going to get to Chris's question with this, because a lot of the work that you do is directly related to your practice, oftentimes you're somewhat integrated. It is definitely difficult to maintain representing clients during the presidency on a direct client representation basis. I would 100% agree with that. Luckily for me, I was in an administrative role of my organization. And so a lot of the things that I needed to do, I was able to continue and keep up with, because I didn't have that, you know, responsibility to be in court, let's say, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Or file a motion. It was more things that were budget for my office or administrative decisions, or, you know, during my presidency, I helped plan and design and build a training center, which is about to open at Legal Aid of Westchester. So there was a lot that I was able to do to balance it. But again, I had the support of my board, and I had the support of my direct boss, who's the executive director. So I just wanted to add that a little bit, because I think it's an important thing to say. It's definitely a lot to balance. It's an exhausting year, but it's a really rewarding year. And so I think the first thing you have to do, I think all of us have done, is you go to the people you work with and say, hey, I want to do this. So when I was hired at Legal Aid by my boss as the deputy executive director, she knew I was going to run for president of the association at that point. And it was part of my job, if you will. It was part of what was expected, right? Or people knew that was going to happen. Specific to Chris's question, I'll say this. I like to say it this way. So I took over as president of the association. Let me explain that when you become president-elect designee a year and a half before you become president. So it's at that point that you start kind of revving up, if you will. Before that, you have to run for president, which takes also a lot of time. And during that time, all of us are members of the House of Delegates. Most of us, I should say, are members of the House of Delegates. I was a member of the executive committee, and I was secretary of the association. So it's a lot of revving up. I took over June 1st of 2022, and I like to say this is what happens. So as I took over on June 1st, a couple weeks later, I got hit literally on a Thursday with the Bruin decision, which was the decision on the constitutionality of New York's gun laws. And the next morning, with the abortion decision, the Dobbs decision. Both of those particularly specifically impacted not only me as a practitioner, but in my practice, right? The work that I was doing. And then, of course, I learned that our chief judge was about to resign, and I like to cap it all off with beginning of July, the Queen of England died. So that was 1 month. But you know, it was exhilarating. And I was prepared. And to Dick's point, the staff is phenomenal. They help you, they organize with you, you sit down, you meet with them. And so immediately you have to be responsive to what's going on. But you also, as president-elect, you learn about these things that are kind of on the burner. So we knew these things were coming. We were expecting it. And so we were able to prepare for it. I would say, you know, there were several really impactful things that happened during my presidency. I'm sure I'll forget one. But certainly as a former assigned counsel attorney, the increase in assigned counsel rates was a big issue coming into my presidency. And I was able to sign the complaint that we filed in suit against the state to increase those rates, which was specifically very near and dear to my heart, obviously. And we got the increase in the rates. We're still fighting about who's going to pay for it. But the other thing, of course, was the Dobbs decision. I will just say, I mean, I was a college student when Casey v. Planned Parenthood was decided, and I was a college student in Washington, D.C. So I remember going through that time frame in my life thinking, this is it. It's now settled. We're never going to have to deal with this anymore. Abortion's legal in this country. And when leading up to that decision coming down, it was one of the most impactful things that happened to me as a woman lawyer, and as a leader in my experience. And working through that with our women in the law section and our staff and our leaders, other leaders, was really an important aspect of not only my presidency, but quite frankly, my career as a lawyer. And then the last point I'll just make is we also had, I mentioned this when we were practicing just a few minutes ago. I am the only president till now, and I probably will be the only president who served 3 chief justices because of what was going on with the replacement of the resigning chief judge. And it was really interesting. And definitely impacted the way the association was working during that time, because there was a lot of upheaval going on within our court system and within you know, our legal community during that time frame.
That's very helpful. Thanks so much for sharing all that, Sherry. So Andrew, I want to turn to you next, and just, you mentioned it in the introductions, but I believe you were sort of ascending to the presidency in 2020, in the spring of 2020, and then took over in 2021. So was there anything going on at that time that impacted your presidency?
Yeah, there was, Chris, and I would love to speak to that as an external event, but I just have to speak to the earlier question that you put to Dick, because it's an important one. And there may be people on this call who may be discouraged if we're not careful as to how we answer that question. Dick mentioned that the position really does become all absorbing and full time, and that is true. Even though it's not written anywhere, it can easily become a full-time job if you do it the right way, but you have time to prepare for that. And we've had a lot of incredibly talented presidents who were sole practitioners. Our president-elect is Dominic Napolitano. Dominic is a sole practitioner, and I have no doubt that he'll give his all to the position and be excellent as a future president. So you can do it, and it's manageable. It's just that you have a fuller plate, and you have to be prepared and willing to accept a fuller plate. And as lawyers, we've had overflowing plates at many times throughout our careers. Also, and I believe Dick mentioned this, we have the assistance of staff. We have an incredible executive director and other members of the staff who are there day in, day out. And members sometimes forget about that. So we don't have to do everything as leaders. We can call upon staff who, quite frankly, are more able than we are as leaders to carry out much of what has to be done. So we can call upon them. And again, please, if you're listening and you're in a small firm, don't be discouraged into thinking that, okay, I would love to do it, but I can't do it because it's too much. You can manage it. And I can talk more about that with anyone offline who would care to talk about that. But also, I actually conducted a week-long major trial during my presidency. Federal court out of town, happened to be in Albany. So that is something that was done, and it was managed and went well. With respect to external events, obviously COVID-19 is still looming. You know, we're still impacted by that. When I was president-elect, one of the joys you have as president-elect is being chair of the House, and you get to run the House meetings, and there are 4 of them. And I think a lot of people who are president-elect look forward to that, enjoy doing it. I would have loved to have done it in person, but all of my House meetings were virtual, every single one. And COVID-19 continued to carry over into my year as president. And half of the year was kind of shut down or hybrid. We didn't have an annual meeting during my year because of COVID-19. And that is just something that you can't plan for. You just roll with that. So for me, it was a matter of figuring out how we continue to conduct business as an association, generate revenue, and keep members active. And we did that. We actually had one of the most successful years in history financially. We also had a great increase in member involvement. So what we did is we looked at what we could do, what we could take advantage of, and we did it. And we ended up serving the Bar Association well. We didn't suffer harm to the association. So, you know, you can find ways to do that. And every president before me and that after me will have to deal with some external event. And you have no idea what's going to come up during your term, and you do the best of it. But what's important is to always maintain the best interests of the association and look for ways to do what you have to do to protect that interest.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for emphasizing the point about being involved and having, you know, an active practice. And we're talking about leadership identity today. And so I'll sort of put this out there. Do each of you have a leadership style? If so, what is it? And how may have it evolved during your presidency? We'll start with Dick.
Well, you know, first of all, one of the great things about being in a leadership position is that you get to at least to some extent guide the direction of the association. But that having been said, I hope that my leadership style is collaborative. I don't think that as a leader you should walk into any particular room and think you're the smartest guy there. I think that you should rely upon the people that really have expertise in various areas. I think that you need to listen to what people have to say. Listening is sometimes a lost art anymore. And frankly, I think I would say that with regard to leadership, you have to do the same thing that I would tell a young lawyer. You need to listen to your adversaries. They may be your greatest mentors. There are people who disagree with you, and maybe they'll change your mind, or maybe you'll change theirs, or maybe you'll meet somewhere in the middle. But I think you have to be ready to hear dissenting voices and be totally transparent. Along the lines of what Andrew said, you really need to look out for the best interests of the Bar Association. And sometimes the opinion of the majority of the Bar Association may conflict with your own opinion, but you have to represent the Bar Association. I think that what's really important is that you don't turn your leadership experience into an ego trip. I don't think that it's all about you as a leader. I think you have to give credit where credit is due. There's a lot of people to give credit to. We've talked about our staff, which is unbelievable. They're the core, really. And our sections are filled with people with great expertise, and our committees as well. And I think that as long as we have the ability to listen and to listen with respect. I mean, every now and then you run into a situation every now and then, almost constantly throughout the times that we live in, you run into periods of total disrespect. We can't tolerate that in our bar association, and no organization should tolerate that. You have to listen and you have to try to understand, and you have to be respectful. If you disagree with somebody, disagree. But we're lawyers, and debate is our lifeblood. So I would hope that my leadership style would be one where I'm not trying to just press my beliefs on other people, that I'm listening to other people, respecting their thoughts, and hopefully moving forward together, and hopefully with mutual respect.
Thanks so much. Sherry?
Sure, yeah. So this is it's a great question. It's an interesting question because I think that nobody ever thinks to look introspectively, necessarily, about their style, going into the role. But then when you know you're going to be taking on this huge role, you really do have to think about what it is and how it is that you're going to manage, right, and handle all of the situations. We named a few. The fact of the matter is that it's day in, day out. Things are constantly happening, whether it's within the legislature, OCA, or affecting the attorneys and our membership and our individuals. I think for me, I agree with Dick. I think collaboration is a huge part of it, and I'll add to that to delegation. I think it's really important to rely upon, and I think Andrew mentioned this a little bit earlier, those who are the particular experts or those who know about a particular area of law when you are dealing with issues that are maybe outside of your area of practice, or you are not the person who's had the most experience. I always hesitate to use the word expert because, as we know, we can never hold ourselves out as experts, right? But we focus our practices. But nonetheless, so I think within as Andrew mentioned, we have such a breadth of brilliance in our association. I think it was Andrew, maybe Dick, maybe both of you. A breadth of brilliance in our leadership, in our membership, in those that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So some of that comes from reaching out to the leaders of various sections when an issue comes up. I mean, I can use an example of reaching out at one point during my presidency to the trial lawyers and the Torts Insurance Compensation Law section, otherwise known as TICL, for those of you who are not NYSBA people, about an issue involving expanding those individuals who can receive wrongful death benefits in a case, which is a very big issue for litigators and came up during my presidency. Bringing together those leaders into the conversations that you're having with the legislature, the governor's office, or even internally is really important. The other thing I think is great is that we have an incredible group within our executive committee. And I actually, I'll note that I will have served on the executive committee at the end of this year, this bar year, which ends in June, 12 years. And this is my last meeting coming up. But the members of the executive committee are also great leaders in our association and great resources. So we have, for me, I like to think that I reach out to individuals, put people in charge of task forces that I respect highly, that, have a particular focus on the area that I'm asking them to engage with. And that's how we end up with these incredible reports and this incredible policy that then we as leaders are able to push forward to either lobby or to make changes to legislation or other things. So for me, I think it's collaboration, delegation, and then I have to say this, respect. We've mentioned the staff a lot, but I think it's really important to mention this again, respecting our staff, respecting those individuals who are helping us, treating them with respect, making them part of the team because they are, not looking to them to serve us. but to work with them. And I think that's really important. And that applies also to your team, your officers' team. I think all of us, in fact, all three of us have had officers calls on a regular basis, engaging our officers and reaching out to them when we can't make something. The one last point I'll end on, Andrew raised his trial that went on during his presidency. I was his president-elect. And, we rely on one another. So if the president can't make something, or maybe there are conflicting events, the president-elect will go. And we have a schedule, and we figure that out so that we can be available to as many different arms of our organization as possible, and be aware of what's going on. It's a huge organization, and something's always happening, even when you're president, that maybe you didn't know of directly. But you have to have faith that those individuals in charge of that section or that group or that organization and the staff, are moving forward in the way that is productive for our organization and association. And I think we're very, very lucky to have such great leaders. And that goes to committees, task forces, and sections.
Thanks so much. So, Andrew, leadership style and how has it evolved, for you throughout sort of your career? How did it evolve during your time as presidency?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I was sitting here thinking about the question from the time that you asked it, and I think I could have simply said ditto to what Dick said, because I think what he described is spot on as to how you should go about being a good leader. I've had the good fortune of being a leader in many different capacities back through my career at the public sector level, in nonprofits, private industry, and it hasn't changed. Whether I was a leader of a committee or section of our association, or as finance chair, or as president, or in any other capacities outside of NYSBA. I think it's important to remain a part of the organization and the team that you're leading. I think you run into mistakes when you begin to let ego get in the way, when you begin to think of yourself as a person more so than the organization that you're supposed to be leading. I think if you keep in mind the good of the organization, it will help to keep you on path as a leader. So I strive to do that, and I agree with much of what's been said here already. The importance of listening to others, engaging others, trying to inspire each other to bring out the best that you all have for the larger good. And that's important, because if you're not careful, you can begin to think that the leadership role is about you. It's not. You're temporary, especially as president, you're temporary. You have 1 year in the position. If you want to make a lasting impact, you have to be looking at what you can do for the organization with integrity and sincerity, because then the good that you do and achieve will remain after you're gone. If you're only able to get people to stay in line, if you will, and do what you want with a whip in your hand, once you're gone along with the whip, then people are just happy to have you gone, and you have no real legacy to leave behind. And as leaders, we really are entrusted for 1 year at a time to try to build upon what has happened before us. And if we're able to do that again to advance the interest of the association, then I think we can deem our term to have been successful.
That's great, Andrew. I mean, and I was going to skip to my next question, but you hit on the word legacy. So I feel duty bound to ask it. So were you conscious of what your legacy might be during your presidency, and did that shape at all any of the decisions you made?
Are you asking me, Chris?
Yes, please.
It really didn't. I think it's important to get up every day and do the very best that you can. Address the issues before you, and then just deal with the things that come up that you really haven't planned for, which go to the issue of external matters that you raised earlier in a question. I think you set out with a mission or a set of goals as president or any leader, and then you come to the realization that you are limited by time and resources and dollars. So you have to keep all of that in mind and work within those limitations and constraints to try to do the best that you can. But if you get to the end of your term and you look back and can say, well, I did everything that I could to achieve my goals. And if that effort left the Bar Association in some measurable way better than when I began, then you're successful.
Thanks so much. I want to come back to President Lewis. So, we've talked about, some of the rewarding aspects of being president of the State Bar Association and some of the external events that could mold the presidency. Are there any specific examples of particular challenges that you've encountered during your presidency? And if so, what sort of skills did you rely upon to meet those challenges?
Well, I guess, Chris, first of all, I would say, and I think that my friends would agree, there's new challenges pretty much every day because, as Abraham Lincoln said, you don't shape the future, I don't remember what he said, but he basically said, you are shaped by the events. And I think you start out and you have certain things in mind that you want to accomplish, and those things are vast. There are so many things that you'd like to do. And then in my case, you have the affirmative action decision that came down. Well, that was that sort of interfered with things, but at the same time, it was a great opportunity to put out to basically put out a report that is now a national phenomenon, and something that we will be able to build on. Now, once again, I was the president while that happened, but I can't take the credit for all of that. That was done by some magnificent members of our association. And then, of course, we had some horrible things going on in New York City and in Brooklyn with regard to Asian hate and with anti-Semitism. And so we confronted that. And again, we had a lot of people working on it. The amount of interest in it was incredible. And the people that put out the report did a magnificent job. And then came the Hamas invasion of October 7th and more anti-Semitism and certain and Islamophobia. And we have to confront those things. So those things are challenging because they tend to step in front of maybe some of the things you want. And I'm sure if you were to ask any of us, we would all say, yeah, I'm pretty proud of some of the things that came out during our presidencies. But, I really wish I could have done more on certain other subjects. We always have the one that got away. And, I certainly do. And I would guess that probably Andrew and Sherry do, as would just about every other president. So I think we're challenged by that. There's other things we're challenged by. Sometimes you have interpersonal issues that you don't want to be involved in, not your own, but others, and you have to sort of become a bit of a referee. And those things eat up your time, but they're necessary. You need to keep people on, you need to help keep people on track when there seems to be a strong divergence of opinion. So, yeah, I think those are some of the challenges.
So Andrew, do you agree, and did you draw upon your experience as a mediator to resolve interpersonal conflicts?
At times, I certainly tried to, and again, as a leader, you're really trying to bring out the best in people.
Right.
And you have to do what you can to put the right people in the right positions, and then work with them and encourage them and listen to them. And that's essential if you really want to be a good leader. And as Dick mentioned earlier, don't expect that simply because you have the title of leader or head of the office or organization such as president of the New York State Bar Association, that you have all the answers. You often don't. And it's probably fair to say that you usually are not the best to speak to most issues. I try to remind myself that there's no shame in that. And you should be willing to engage those who know more than you, bring them to the table, as opposed to going forward and thinking that you know everything. So, I do think it's important that we keep that in mind as leaders. And one thing I want to mention, Chris, as I wrap up, is we sometimes get hung up on thinking about the top position when we talk about being a leader. We all have the benefit of having been president of our bar association, but you're also a leader at the committee level, if you're a chair, or at section level, or task forces, or an executive committee. There are many leaders in our organization, and we have to rely upon them and try to encourage them to be the best leaders that they can be, so that those that they are leading will in turn bring out the best that they have to offer, all for the good of the association.
Thanks so much. I'll turn back to Sherry. Challenges, surprises, obstacles, and how you went about addressing them.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, first of all, I'll echo what Dick and Andrew said. I'll speak specifically to some of the things that I encountered. So, for example, my presidency started coming out of COVID. So, a lot of what I had to deal with decisions that I didn't, and like when I was planning to be president, or thinking I was going to run for president, I should say, it was pre-COVID. Then I was running during COVID. Then COVID happened. I expected it to be over. And I was the president that kind of brought us out of COVID. So there were a lot of choices, a lot of interpersonal, as Dick mentioned, some conflicts or disagreements, if you will, as to how things should happen post-COVID. And not only, I don't even mean internally, but in the world, right? In the world. Were people going to come to events anymore? Were people ever going to come out again? Were people ever going to go to a party again? I mean, these were questions that were asked, right? Or conference in person. So that was a big challenge, I would say, that I didn't necessarily anticipate in the beginning. And as I led up to it, I realized, oh, I'm going to be faced with this. And now I have to be faced with this. And what decisions are we going to make? To Andrew's point, thinking about the best interest of the association and the best interest of our members. So there were choices that both Andrew and I had to make regarding COVID in particular, that maybe as leaders, we wouldn't have wanted to make, but we did make because it was in the best interest of those individuals. The other thing that hugely impacted my presidency, but I would like to say I was really proud of the way that we came out on it, was the war in Ukraine. So that was happening, when I took over as president, and we had some resolutions that we had worked on and were working on that we ended up bringing to the ABA, taking positions regarding that. But that and COVID really impacted the international and the global nature of our organization. I mean, yes, we're New York, but we have an incredibly large non-resident member group. I forget the exact percentage now. I bet you guys know it. When I was membership chair, I did, but it was something like 25 or, it's increased since then, % of our members. And a large percentage of those people are international. And we have a very active international section that jumped right in when there were issues in Ukraine, and we're out there doing pro bono work in Poland, supporting Ukraine. And that was an amazing experience to see our members and our leaders really jump out to help and support, similar to what Dick's dealing with now with the war in Israel and the way that they're supporting Israel, which is huge, and the pro bono project that we have, supporting people and lawyers. So these were wars. These are, world crises that as leaders of this association, all of a sudden you're faced with. And I think that the other thing that happened post-COVID was really in my opinion, the huge takeoff, if you will, of the global nature of just our world. right? We all of a sudden went virtual. We were all relying on what we're doing right now, speaking to people online, which we hadn't really done before. One of my initiatives and focuses was the blockchain technology, Web3, and the emerging technologies that were coming and were existing, but now more and more prominent in our practice and in our world, and continue to be. So these are all things that kind of interplayed with one another. So I was very lucky, I think, in that, in my regard, to have formed amazing alliances around the world with other presidents of other associations, with the American Bar Association. I was lucky enough to have Deborah Enix Ross as co-president, another New Yorker, which was really a wonderful opportunity, but also, to travel and to collaborate on so many of these world issues together. That was something that was really, impactful, and something that, to the point that I think Andrew made, there were things that come that you're not anticipating, and then they play out, and they may derail or change the trajectory of the things you wanted to accomplish. I would agree. I think, Dick, you said it. We all are going to leave wanting to have done more, or thinking, oh, I wish I could have done that. But there's a lot that we are all incredibly proud of. So going back to the legacy question, I want to conclude on that, because I think it's a really interesting point that you make. I don't think any of us go in, and I won't speak for anyone else, I didn't go in thinking about what my legacy was going to look like. I wanted to do the best I could to serve our association, the lawyers of our organization, and quite frankly, to keep New York in its prominent place in the world, because everybody in the world looks to New York. The New York Bar is one of the few bar associations in our country that really is looked to as almost an international voice. Everybody wants to know what New York is doing, because New York is the epicenter of so much of the legal practice, technology, finance, right? All of these things that impact what we do. And you think about that more than you think about what is it going to look like when I'm done. And then we all continue in various ways, because we truly love the association and the people that we work with. And even, we may have different leadership styles, and all leaders may not necessarily agree, but in the end, we are all working together and have enormous respect for one another. And then you become a member of what, as we affectionately call, the UPS, which is the Youth President Society. And that's an incredible group of individuals that you have this relationship with for the rest of your life. It's family. And so I wanted to end on that, because I think when you think about this, and all of you that I hope will follow and try to, continue in leadership roles in our association, that it is an honor. It is something that we all have great respect for, and great respect for one another and the work that we do. So I'll close with that.
Thank you so much. And Sherry, I don't know if you saw one of the questions that came in, but it dovetails very well. The question is, are there opportunities for members who reside out of the country to serve in NYSBA? And the answer is, certainly yes. And anybody, please feel free to reach out to Catherine or myself over email. We're happy to discuss it.
Chris, if I could just quickly, I just want to say this: our international section, if you're out of the country, the leadership roles that you can have, not only in the larger system, but through the international section, are phenomenal, and through our association. So yes.
Great. There's a lot more we could talk about clearly, but we're unfortunately coming up to the end of our time. I do want to give Andrew and Dick, because I think Sherry touched on this, but I'd like to give you sort of a final opportunity, to the extent you would like to, for the people who are watching this now and the people who are going to watch this, later, and are interested in becoming involved and interested in exploring leadership opportunities. Do you have any final tips or words of wisdom, for them as they think about this and they plan for it? I'll start with you, Andrew, and then we'll wrap up with Dick.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And hopefully something was said during this call to impress upon those younger members that may be on the call. Because we've been talking about a bar association, but if we're going to be successful long-term, we have to be positioning our bar association to be where it needs to be going forward. We need to position ourselves for the future. We need to do all that we can to make sure that we're sound and well-positioned to meet the challenges ahead. And that really makes us dependent on younger members. If we don't get younger members involved, then we're doomed, quite frankly. It's vitally important that we engage younger members, listen to them, and put them in positions to be leaders, and not 10 years down the road, but now.
Right.
The best way that you can become a leader is to get involved. You'll never be a leader in our bar association if you don't get involved. Get involved at the county, at the committee level, at the section level, on task forces. There are more than ample opportunities out there to get involved. And then don't be afraid to step up. Take a position that's going to enable you to present to a larger body of people in our association. Maybe those on the committee or those within the section. It may be looking for opportunities to get in the house and make a presentation. These opportunities are there. And again, don't wait. Don't think that you can only do these things when you're decades ahead in your career. That's not good for us as an association to have you think that way. So I do hope that many will get involved and look for opportunities to get involved. And again, in the interest of time, I'll simply say that what you do can be incredibly rewarding, self-rewarding, as well as in the interest of the Bar Association. And as lawyers, I think we all have an obligation to protect the interest of the Bar Association over our own narrow self-interest. I think in the long run, if you keep that in mind, then you'll find the personal fulfillment within your membership as well as over the long term of your career.
Thanks so much. I think that's a really important message to set in. And for those who are watching this live or going to be watching it later, and you're looking for ways to specifically become involved, or you're looking for some guidance, that's what our committee does. So please feel free. You're strongly encouraged to reach out to Catherine or to me over email. Our contact information is on the website. So we hope to hear from you. It's been a really, really informative session, and I can't thank the three of you enough for taking the time to do this. I'd like to offer President Lewis any final words as we wrap up.
Sure, and I know time is short, Chris, and thank you for putting this program on to both you and Catherine. Look, when we all decided to go to law school or go into the practice of law, we can all be cynical and say, gee, I wanted to do it because I knew I'd be able to make a living, or I wanted the prestige or the power. But somewhere there was a kernel of idealism, if not many kernels of idealism, and things that you felt you could do to make our society a little better. And then, of course, we get into practice and we're thinking about billable hours, and we're thinking about moving up the partnership chain and that type of thing. Well, the Bar Association gives you that opportunity to sort of be reborn as far as the idealism goes. And there's a million ways to get involved. We've got hundreds of committees, subcommittees, sections, subsections, whatever. And if you have any interest, not just in the business of law, but in the practice of law, you have so many portals to enter this Bar Association and to speak up and to be heard. Speaking is really important, but hearing may be more important. And there are people who are ready to listen to you. So I would encourage anybody who has an interest in law, anyone who has an interest in what law can do for our society and for our profession, to enter one of those portals. Thanks, all.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to everybody for appearing today and participating, and to Catherine, Kim, and Ernesto for helping to put this together. And please keep a lookout for our next program, which will be announced very soon. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.